To be continued. Welcome to the Liberty UA channel. Joining us today is Denis Eliseevich, an entrepreneur and political activist. Welcome, Mr. Denis.
Hello, Tatiana. Stiana.
I encourage you to subscribe to Denis Eliseevich's channel, to our channel Liberty UA, as well as Liberty TV if you want to watch short clips of our videos.
Please leave us a like and leave comments, and if you can, share our video. Vladimir Putin is arriving in Beijing today, May 19th, for a meeting with Xi. This is exactly how Ukrainian media are reporting it. The dictators are supposed to sign a joint declaration and about 40 different agreements. They will be talking about business, about joint cooperation, about the oil sector, and power of Siberia too will be on the agenda.
The issue of Ukraine and major geopolitics, will it be on the agenda? And if so, under whose geopolitical influence, in your opinion, will Ukraine fall? Yes.
It will definitely be discussed there. Ukraine does not fall directly under Russian influence or Chinese influence, but indirectly, of course, it does. But you understand, no matter what agreements are made there are internal issues that prevent peace from happening. The first issue is Volodymyr Zelensky.
He doesn't allow peace to happen, but recently he made such a high-profile statement. He says that according to our intelligence, the Kremlin is preparing a massive wave of missile and drone strikes. And this time, the decision-making centers, they will be the ones under attack. He's hinting at himself. What do you think? Is it beneficial for Putin to eliminate Zelensky now?
No, he won't find another one like him, an assistant in destroying Ukraine. I think Zelensky is his best helper in this sense. Second, well, look, Zelensky is saying they want to destroy the decision-making centers, a massive strike. But you understand, I've done this, other people have done this. You can simply compare how Russia usually strikes and how Russia strikes after heavy attacks on its own territory. And I didn't say this, anyone can check if they want, that after their shelling, even harsher strikes hit Ukraine from Russia. Only there, you see, it's usually infrastructure that suffers, oil facilities, something else. But in Ukraine, people are killed and residential buildings are hit too. That's why they strike, as I've already said. They strike, we strike back. Again, they strike, then we strike back again. Does this end the war? Does it help to end it or not? Now, about what's actually happening there. These terrible videos about Ukraine, the strikes on Russian oil depots, it's that black smoke that's burning. It all looks so dramatic. But as I told you before, experts say, yes, it's damage. But this is something that can be repaired. A week, two, a month, but it can be repaired. Yes, repairs cost money, and during this time it's not working, so the Russian economy suffers. But does it suffer enough to stop the war? No, it doesn't suffer that much. But I'll tell you something else. Who is satisfied? Some Europeans are satisfied. They clap their hands and say, oh, bravo, Zelensky, you're doing such a great job. That's what suits us. And then our people ask, why is Europe silent about the military recruitment centers? Did you even see today people are already attacking in crowds, breaking out the windows and doors, dragging that man out to shouts of shame and applauding that they managed to do it while those guys run away in disgrace? Europe doesn't care about this. The European Union, not Europe, the European Union doesn't care about this. Then Yermak. Well, in any other country, this would be resignation after resignation. It's terrible, a nightmare, a disgrace. But Zelensky can afford not to comment on this at all for 2 weeks. Not to say a single word, even though he should have gone live to the people, at least to journalists or so-called journalists, to answer some questions. It feels like nothing is happening. This is your closest associate, not just anyone or a minister. Even the general minister needs Zelensky's approval, your closest person, and Europe is watching. You're hitting Russian oil terminals. Bravo to you. Well done. Keep it up. But at the same time, with this other hand, we're still buying from Russia. And that's just impossible to make sense of. In reality, certain clans are making money. Ukraine has been put in the position of a country. Guys, you're not a successful country. You're not fully established in the true sense. That's why you'll be a buffer, one that's soaked in blood and so on. There's no one left to work. We'll bring you some Indians and men. Go to the front. Women, come to us, especially the beautiful ones. That's how Ukraine we know and love ended. And so, of course, I'm trying my best to make sure that this doesn't happen. That's the plan.
Why do you think Zelensky doesn't comment in any way about his connection to this mansion? Well, we don't know if he's connected.
We know that it's either Respondent 1 or Residence 1, but they say that new tapes will be released soon. And there we might hear the voice of Volodymyr, the one being discussed. Maybe the woman whose conversation will also be interesting to us.
But for some reason, there are no comments from the Supreme Commander-in-Chief of the country regarding the accusations against him. Why is that?
Thank you. I already told you it's because he's allowed to behave this way. Because in Ukraine, the constitution is so terrible that we can't properly impeach him through a normal procedure. Because in Ukraine, that's the kind of politics we have, where the deputies don't want to do anything, can't do anything, and the people let them get away with it. Because that's the way Ukraine is. Today I read that some member of parliament from the Servant of the People party says she's an expert on the construction of Yermak's house. He was beaten, intimidated, and the security service of Ukraine collected information on him. That means the security service is protecting Yermak. So what else is there to discuss? How can this country be normal if some guy without any official status or authority just takes over and commands our entire security service? Or at least the main part of it, let's put it that way. So this security service is actually protecting Yermak personally? Is that so? Are those in this security service who work for Yermak his corrupt accomplices? This security service, yes, part of it is fighting against Russia. Well, you combine it all together. So yes, we're fighting against Russia here so we can steal and set up a dictatorship. So where does this go? There will be a Ukraine that benefits them financially. They've adapted to fighting there. Trust me, those avoiding the war won't go. They'll send others instead. But in the end, all this will only lead to failure. And then this Yermak comes out of pretrial detention and writes a post. Again, I'm not going to run anywhere. I'm not going to escape. Let me emphasize, I will continue doing what I've been doing, working for the country 24/7, helping the military. Well, this is Orwell. This is just absurd. When I read this, do you know what annoys me the most? He doesn't even have to come up with anything creative. He just throws out any nonsense like that because he thinks we're idiots. He thinks, I'll just send a text to these idiots and let them eat it up. And I'll just keep doing my own thing here. But let me tell you something else. Going back to the beginning of your question about Nabu. So Tatiana, Nabu has all the recordings in advance. Some of them, and I want to emphasize, some of those who publish these recordings know everything or almost everything. They've seen the transcripts of the recordings in advance. On these recordings, I read it somewhere, on these recordings, there's Zelensky, there are other very important people and members of his family. Some things are being discussed there, things that, I don't know, maybe even his cunning. His little followers will change their minds about supporting him and finally understand who this person is. They have all of this. There is more on Yermak. They have materials that would allow Yermak to be put in a detention center without the right to bail. If you are an organized criminal group, an OCG, an organized criminal group, then you cannot be released on bail. And all the materials they have allow them to interpret it that way. That's it. And he will sit there for a long, very long time. And then he'll be sent to prison. But there's just one thing. Unless there's a backroom deal, and in our country that's very likely, all these endless under-the-table negotiations behind closed doors. If for once in Ukraine's history everything is done for real, then he'll go down and drag the others with him, since Yermak has no one but those guys have people to give up. All of them, the Chernyshovs, even Minich, they could turn in Yermak and Zelensky. And who does Yermak have to turn in? Zelensky? He won't turn him in. Not in the way everyone thinks, like, I'm not with you anymore. They're together everywhere when it comes to gas.
Well, there are rumors that supposedly on these tapes, people were being called trash. In particular, a woman was calling people trash. And what happened in Bakhmut was done to boost their own ratings and to run a sort of PR campaign and to explain things and to drive as many people as possible to Bakhmut so that they would die while calling them trash and at the same time running a PR campaign for themselves. Did you know about this information?
Subtitles. I don't want to repeat it since someone writes it somewhere occasionally and I haven't heard it myself. And sometimes I see the original sources where it's from. I'm not going to play along with them, you know. I didn't want to set up or bring down Zelensky, so I haven't heard them. I read whatever was scrawled on a fence, and there's a lot of stuff there. And I'm just curious, those who publish these tapes, the Nabu people, obviously they've heard them. They know why they act so confidently in certain situations. I think if everything goes according to an honest scenario, then Yermak will continue receiving notices of suspicion. Next, you see, he was just served with a notice of suspicion. He paid 3 million, got out, and they can serve him another notice of suspicion. And this process is called cornering, but only within the legal framework. You know what else really worries me? There's one thing. A law firm posted 4 million hryvnias for him. Well, this is one of the largest, let's call it donations to Yermak, his bail. And this little lawyer writes a post about it. So first of all, he justifies that he made the payment for Yermak, saying that you always have to stand up for the law. And in general, he says he'll appeal to the Prosecutor General's office. How is it that those who post bail for Yermak have become public knowledge? So if you're such a decent person, what are you afraid of? If Yermak is such a good guy, then what is it? The public shouldn't know about this, and that's what his post is about. That's what outrages him. And after that, he writes a post. You know, reforms like the ones that were carried out, roughly speaking, not word for word, reforms like the ones carried out by successful Western countries, they're not for us. We have our own special path based on blood. Neither Yermak nor this cliché sheds blood on the front lines. That's the first thing. Second, this is Yermak, our special path, under which the special services and basically all the security forces and courts, this is our special path. And this privileged little character, he settled in quietly, found his place in this dictatorship and system, and turns a blind eye to all the horrors. Or maybe he's just like them, that's normal for him, and that's what we need to start from. Liza Bogutskaya, the way they suck up to him, the way they write all this, you know, the good news is that there are very few of them, literally 5 people in all of Ukraine who have publicly gone this far. Probably, like I said, there was no other choice, but as a phenomenon. You know, those people who write in Moscovorod, Kosovorod, Shalopi, or like, why are they at the front? Moms on Vishenka, why do you all have such cool ones? No complaints about Yermak's defenders, about those who are really destroying Ukraine, profiting from the war, and have built a dictatorship in Ukraine. I wasn't the one who set it up, not some draft dodger, not some Russian speaker. It was Yermak. He built it with Zelensky. Yermak was its architect. That's all you need to know about those characters tearing their own people apart, helping Putin and Zelensky split their own people in two from within. And they have this endless complaint about the language, but migrants keep coming. Who do you think you'll be teaching the language to later, an Indian or what? That's how, Tatiana, the most terrifying KGB methods are being worked out. And Yermak, by the way, is a pure KGB man. All his methods are KGB style. Because even this case, it's just one of the cases with that real estate expert. You know, it's all about applying pressure right away, intimidating. That's the only way he can operate. Intimidate, apply pressure, use administrative resources, act lawlessly. He simply can't do it any other way. And that's the scariest thing. It will never let Ukraine be successful, not even have a chance.
What do the members of parliament say? Why aren't they taking any measures regarding the president? They say there are no allegations against him, he has immunity, and he's not on the tapes. Regarding the information about Yermak, they are turning to NABU and SAP because where else can they turn? They are submitting written statements to NABU and SAP because it's directly their job, and they say investigate this case and give us your findings, but they simply aren't taking any action.
Even if they publish all these allegations against us, recordings with women, with Bakhmut, with being called trash, if it turns out to be true, because these are just rumors from Telegram channels, so what? If deputies appeal to NABU and SAP, they will react the same way as now. They won't react at all. So no matter what they publish about us, there will be no result in terms of ending the war or overthrowing, changing is the right word, the government.
Even if there is something there about trash and about Bakhmut, as you said, NABU will not publish it. And I'll explain to you why. Because such organizations are guided by, and in general in Ukraine, most people are guided by this kind of political correctness. Or by foolish dogmas, like if you publish something like this now, there's a war going on, it will really demoralize the public. Yes, it will undermine, of course, it will really undermine the people's faith, but only in Zelensky. Do you understand? Ukraine needs him removed. Resignation, impeachment, public disgrace, elections, society should demand elections, choose a new president and keep living, end the war and keep living. But here it's set up so that by undermining sort of Zelensky, even the NABU people themselves do it. Just look at Ukrainska Pravda with Savil Musaiva, the chief editor, she's singing the same tune. They say, yes, Yermak is very bad, but the president needs to be supported. You see, there's a war going on. That's all the Soros kids for you. That's all the Soros kids for you. That's their whole method. They're basically not much different from Zelensky, except, you know, there's one thing that sets them apart. They won't go for such lawlessness. Of course, they won't use security services for pressure. They won't do anything illegal. But in everything else, their task is to serve the same foreign organizations that Zelensky is currently partially serving. Organizations that have their own goals for Ukraine. So they need to serve them in the Verkhovna Rada to pass the most extreme bills so that we get a loan. And these organizations and people were controlling Ukraine from the outside, and their vision for Ukraine is just as I already told you. So this is not about Ukraine, that's all. Even these heroic Soros supporters whom I now support against Yermak, who are exposing Yermak, their goal for Ukraine is not the way I want to see it. There, you and probably many people, their goal is just to play along, and basically we're just not as bad as Zelensky, and that's it. Well, and
why are we attacking Russia with drones now? And do you think this is the right thing to do? So we feel a sense of injustice. They attack us. We feel bad. We suffer. Our people are dying and we attack them. Renat Suleimanov, a deputy in the State Duma, spoke out and said that Russians need to end the war as soon as possible. He says that military expenses have consumed 40% of the federal budget of the Russian Federation, destroyed investment, and driven up inflation. He is sounding the alarm, saying that the situation is getting worse and the war needs to be stopped. What do you think the fact that we are hitting them with drones and their economic situation is somewhat difficult, though not extremely severe? Will this force the Russians to agree to a peace deal?
No, because I want to study more. I haven't yet looked into the statement of the State Duma deputy you mentioned, but I am observing Russia's economy. Yes, it has stopped growing. Yes, it is stagnating. But for a country like Russia, this is not a catastrophe because Russia has never had an economy built around creation or human intellect. It's purely a resource-based economy. It's not a place where human intellect is valued. Well, basically, it's like in Ukraine, only on a much larger scale. So there's no need to worry about that. Putin will cut funding for something that wasn't really there anyway and increase funding for the war. The military budget is already big as it is. I think it was $150 billion or maybe 100, I think 150, which is a lot, or maybe even euros. So all of this doesn't benefit Russia like the normal Russia, the kind that a regular Russian probably wants, a democratic Russia with a completely different kind of economy. There's no future for that. But for Putin's kind of Russia, yeah, he doesn't care. And when we say that the Russian economy is doing okay, we have to compare it to how our own economy is doing. The fact that we're being loaded with these loans under a bunch of stupid obligations that destroy our prospects, so what happens next? I once joked on your show, while the fat ones lose weight, the skinny ones will die. And that's exactly the case here. We're the skinny ones in this situation. You see, Zelensky is also just propaganda for the foolish. He turns on a video address. He doesn't want to talk about Yermak, and today we attacked with 100 drones, long-range sanctions, and this ordinary Ukrainian, just like an ordinary Russian on a torn-up couch. And in the case of Ukraine, there's a man hiding somewhere in a basement, or an unstable woman in Warsaw. She's literally jumping for joy. That's how happy she is. Finally, long-range sanctions. How nice, I have something to be proud of. Zelensky launched domestically produced drones on which he made a lot of money attacking Russia. Now this kind of passport is valued, now I feel proud. You know, Tatiana, I don't feel proud about this. If we at least competed economically with Poland, I would feel proud. If our GDP per capita was at least $1,030 a year, then I would feel proud. But for now, only Zelensky can feel that pride, as he keeps showing what a cool guy he is. I understand someone unprepared might hear this and say, how can you say that? How could you? Well, that's how it is. This is the 5th year of a war that needs to end. It is destroying Ukraine and destroying Ukrainian society. And if you noticed regarding my predictions on your show and the point of no return, which I said would happen at the end of summer or the beginning of autumn, society is slowly approaching that. Let's recall the latest Eurovision example. A Bulgarian girl wins. These are our neighbors, Instead of being happy and congratulating her, these idiots who, of course, are saying Mavnyuki, of course, Mavnyuki, they go and find some producer who worked with Kirkorov, supposedly went to Moscow and somewhere else. I see Bulgarians from show business coming into the comments and writing, this person is actually from Greece who participated there. We don't even know who is doing what there. What does it have to do with anything? Today they're getting their fill. They found a Z with her, even though it was for some festival or for the Z generation. It has nothing to do with Putin. They twisted everything like this. The judges, those bastards, Why did you lower our Lolex score? That's Bulgaria. There are racists there. Kirkorov did this. Today it turns out that Ukrainians were involved, a whole group of people from Ukraine, in staging this Bulgarian girl's performance. They're joking they'll now check every Ukrainian's background up to 5 generations for any contact. You know what I mean? Some Ukrainians have become infected with obscurantism from Russia. They've turned into such sick people who hate the whole world, who, instead of looking for friends, look for enemies, failures, losers with a little brother complex. The Ukrainian national football team lost. Everyone's talking about the referee didn't make the Eurovision top 3, bad judges. Instead of acknowledging someone else's success, saying, guys, you were better today and we'll keep working to be professional and learn something and just be normal. Normal, civilized people. And, you know, for Russians, for these Putinists, it's like the Americans, the Ukrainians, they call us outskirts. They're all to blame. NATO is approaching, blah, blah, blah. The whole world is bad. The whole world is terrible. They underestimate us. They don't like us. It's the same with these people, just under the Ukrainian flag, speaking Ukrainian and with a different leader's name. It's a disgrace.
But why is even sport in our country tied to politics? Like, we have Eurovision and that's connected to, and with sports, Rebrov posted 30 million bail for Yermak. People were confused by this. Why did he do it? And why did he owe him? Is he grateful to him? Or how should this be interpreted?
Look, I grew up at that time. I grew up at a time when every second or third guy in Ukraine wore a Dynamo Kyiv t-shirt. On the back, it said Rebrov or Shevchenko. So they were national idols, favorites. Everyone knew them. Today, their football careers as players are over, and both of them have turned into scoundrels, just scoundrels, who are ready to use their world-famous names for an extra couple of $1 million, which if they had any brains, they could have earned without doing this. And Rebrov is a friend of Yermak. He openly said that it was Yermak who lobbied for him to get this position. Tatiana, I spoke about this in 2023 or 2024.
I had everything saved on Telegram.
Those fanatics attacked me because I'm a real professional in sports. That's my field. They don't understand. They're just sitting there with a beer and a scarf thinking they know everything. They attacked me? Yeah, people wanted Rebrov, saying, who are you? Stay out of football, blah, blah, blah. It was a complete disaster, a total failure, even though we had a talented generation of football players, and now he even gave money for Yermak. And everyone was like, oh my God, what a scoundrel. Look, I was the first to publish the salaries that he was earning on par with the Spanish national team's coach. Billions, 1,300,000 euros a year. And today, suddenly, they're interested in this. That's how it will be with politics too, Tatiana. In 3 years, they'll be saying, but it'll be too late. What's my point? That's also the horror of our, how should I put it, mentality, probably mentality. When you do something like that for Yermak, people blacklist you. Yes, thank God they've already started to figure it out. Rebrov, after that, he's a nobody, an empty shell. He ruined everything. What he had earned for his reputation with blood and sweat. Apparently there was no other choice, but that's how everything works in Ukraine. That's how the rotten post-Soviet system is set up. Just a rotten post-Soviet system. It's a disgrace. They're all capos. Everyone involved in bailing Yermak out is a capo. By the way, there weren't many people willing to do it. And notice, moving on or going back to Yermak, no one met him near the detention center. No one came to the courtroom. What a disgrace. And this is a very telling moment. Thank you.
Zelensky said that we came together, we will leave together. By the way, I remember that video where you analyzed the football players. Back then, I remember you were comparing the country's GDP, their countries, and the salaries of football coaches. And I remember that it was impressive. We are, and we're very poor, but Rebrov had a very high salary compared to other coaches. Without results.
You understand? There are no results. If you claim you need sports results as propaganda, like in a dictatorship, you don't even have that.
Why doesn't Zelensky follow this principle, or does it exist in the president's office? For example, Mendel worked with Zelensky. What would she say about me? Did she do well or badly? She worked with him for many years. Now she came out and told the whole world what Ukrainians already knew anyway.
Well, okay, Zelensky said about Yermak, he came and he will go, he came and he will go. Why isn't he saying anything now? Well?
He's not doing anything. We haven't talked since Mendel's interview. This is the first time we're talking. Well, for the same reason as Yermak. What did they tell him? What is he supposed to say? You said it right. She basically said everything that people already knew. About 90% of it. I actually talked about all of this too, the same things. But when this is told by someone who worked directly with him, it kind of legitimizes everything that was said about him before by other people. Well, look, the procedure was standard. The harassment of Mendel, the talk about how unbearable Mendel is. Wait, let Mendel be the worst in the world. She's a traitor to Zelensky, not Ukraine, and has no ties to Russia. She lives in the US, trust me. Why aren't you discussing what she said? Well, then refute at least one point she made. Just refute her claim that he does propaganda. Anyone can show you that now. There are 1,000 examples of censorship in Ukraine and everything else. They focus on Mendel, but the scoundrels have gone even further. Podolyak, Gordon, Milovanov. And do you know what they said? They decided to turn this horror to their advantage as a damage control move and are pushing a certain thesis, a narrative. In Ukraine, the state's second most important person was put in pretrial detention for corruption, and the case is in court. Can you imagine that happening in Russia? We have democracy. Gordon says we have democracy. I'm proud to live in a democratic country. That's how it is.
And all these freaks, they're all turning Ukraine into Russia 2.0. She spoke out, Mendel, not on her own. Well, she ruined her reputation, probably because, well, who else, what other president would come to Ukraine and take her as a secretary after what she said? What do you think?
But that's not her goal. That's not her goal. What upset me is that she said, like, after this interview, I won't be able to return to Ukraine. So that's the kind of thoughts she has. She likely has different goals and aims in life. She said there that she passed the selection, 4,000 people per spot, like she passed the selection, but she had lobbying. That's not really important in this situation. The fact that she had lobbying, even if she got in through connections, that doesn't cancel out everything she talked about. But that's just how it went. Tatiana Bogdan is still to come. Bogdan is still ahead, and he will speak too. And by the way, what Bogdan will say might even be more important than tapes like the ones we had. If they play a direct recording of Yermak or Zelensky, that would be impressive. But Bogdan can say a lot.
So let's sum up. Why is all this being done? What's the thinking? There are rumors that the main condition of the Western sponsors is a radical strengthening of Budanov's position and a purge of Zelensky's entourage.
What will be the signs that they have succeeded after the Nabu tapes and after Mendel's speech? Zelensky will have to strengthen mobilization. He will have to share positions with someone. Budanov's powers and actions should be expanded. Do you see such a scenario as realistic?
Yes, there are a lot of myths. In what you just read, there are a lot of myths. What's the first myth? Someone started saying that Budanov is a pro-American presidential candidate. And this affected the ratings. Probably Budanov himself benefited from it in the ratings. But that's not true. That's not true. Это неправда. Second, Budanov really got caught in a tough spot. Third, Budanov's posts. I wrote to him there. Budanov's posts on social media, I think, are written by the same SMM manager as for Zaluzhny. His task is one post, minus 0.5 to Budanov's rating. I mean, it's absolute nonsense, absolute crap. And Budanov himself has been making a lot of foolish statements lately. He started off well. Now, let's compare the following. Zelensky announced changes in the diplomatic corps. And rumors started spreading that now they might actually remove Zaluzhny. If Zaluzhny is now removed from the position of ambassador in London, Zaluzhny has only one path left. That is to publicly declare his political ambitions. Of course, he can't return to Ukraine, so he'll have to stay and live in London. That's because they'll naturally do something to him in Ukraine. It's either this way, or he continues to be neither fish nor fowl. Tatiana, from my life experience, there are people who are, let's say, conditionally good, conditionally bad for me personally, and then there are those who are neither fish nor fowl. Yes, not exactly good or bad, but positive and negative characters, neither fish nor fowl. That's the problem with Zaluzhny and Budanov. They're neither fish nor fowl. Who knows? If we're talking about Zelensky and Yermak, they're crooks. Definitely not a scoundrel. So here you are, you, and both are generals, and everything is so cool, and Budanov comes to the interview with a pistol, and his expression is unwavering, and he wants to seem so cool-headed. Well, but it doesn't have the effect he wants it to have. He's hard to read, neither fish nor fowl. His people can't figure him out. In politics, in reforms, when we talk about historical figures who change the course of their country's history for the better, who make reforms, it doesn't work like that. A person who's indecisive won't make reforms. Tegipko will appoint, look, what do I think the plan is? Budanov as president, Tegipko as prime minister. Like, Budanov is a sort of ceremonial general with his own authority, and he's dealing with the war and those matters. Tegipko is in charge of the economy and the domestic side of things. Forgive me, but Tegipko, he's a very good entrepreneur. A Komsomol member, things are a bit unusual there, but I know his company, I've dealt with them, he has strong management. Everything's fine here, he's a wealthy man, but he'll make political decisions based on his own understanding. And he's a person from the 1990s. I don't judge them. I probably would have been the same if my period of economic activity had fallen during that time. But people from the 1990s think differently. He was present during Kuchma's era and under every president. Even under Yanukovych, I believe he led his campaign headquarters during the third round when Yushchenko won. So, you know, it will be just nice words like Yatsenyuks. Give us a loan, we got the loan, pay your taxes, everything should be fair, the tax office shouldn't interfere with entrepreneurs, but overall everything will stay the same as it was. See, everything will remain the same. Well, where is this going? Where is this going in Ukraine? We're just at the bottom. Yesterday I saw a new list, the lowest ranking the worst, basically. Countries at the bottom in terms of GDP per capita. Who has the lowest numbers? Ukraine is poorer. On a per capita basis, Ukrainians are poorer than Kosovars, Moldovans, and Belarusians. It's a disgrace. It's a shame. $6,000 per year per capita in Croatia. It's 30,000. I look at all this. This is how Ukraine is measured, whether it's a cool country or not, whether success awaits us, whether we're moving in the right direction. That was Tatiana post from an English language page. What do you think? I'm opening the comments. Some Ukrainian fool crawls in and writes, what if all of you, if those countries had a war, would you all be there too? I write to him, expert, the same ratings were there before the war. Our GDP has basically not changed from pre-war levels. It was all the same back then. That's it. So it's a nightmare, it's terrible, and ignorance and being a loser are to blame for everything. This mentality, and of course, Tatiana, the information bubble, when everyone around you is telling you one thing and some Eliseevich pops up with something different, they immediately try to make me look like a crazy clown. That's just the way the system works. Or they say,
team up with someone. People suggest you should unite. They say that it's impossible for anyone to destroy this government alone. No one can handle it by themselves. But together it's possible. That's why you need to unite. Some people seek partners to remove the government, then everyone goes their separate ways. Libertarianism, democracy, communism, since everyone wants something different. But the main thing is when there's a change of government, you need to be united. You don't unite with anyone. Why?
first, I don't have any parties. Uniting is when you and another party form a bloc to combine your support, run in elections, possibly remove someone, win, and enter parliament. That kind of unification, it's not that I agree to it. I would agree, but I understand the motivation. What does it mean to unite right now? Well, what does it mean to unite right now? I understand what Moshaichuk is for. For me, it's A, he's against Zelensky, basically. Who else should I unite with? With Darvotich. But he's with Timoshenko, the architect of this system.
Kupri says he wants to unite with decent people, but he doesn't really specify what kind of decent people.
So Kupri comes to my show, the shows, we talk. I don't really know Kupri's views. Besides, all the people we're mentioning, they've all been involved in politics before. Good or bad, let people decide. I don't judge anyone. Let people judge. But those who had a chance in politics should have done something. Just something. Now, each of them will come out and say, oh, okay, yeah, I submitted this, I submitted that. But, for example, Moshaichuk said he submitted a bill about Krugliak. No offense, but is Krugliak really all that a people's deputy is capable of? Someone who positions himself as a super opponent to Zelensky? If he had submitted 30, not just him, anyone who now calls themselves an opponent of Zelensky, if they had submitted 30 bills on economic liberalization and they weren't supported on other things that Ukraine urgently needs, radical reforms, none of that was done. So, sorry, I support everyone who is against Zelensky, but when we talk about political direction and vision, I understand what's happening, I understand what needs to be done. Tatiana, I don't have, you see, a goal of getting my snout in the trough at any cost. Like, they think that I'm on YouTube just to promote myself. I don't need that at all. Let someone come along who I can pass all this on to, let them run for office wherever they want. I'll focus on business and occasionally speak out from time to time. That's it, period. I don't have this crazy desire like, oh, this is my chance to jump into politics. There's nothing like that, not even close.
I'm interested in your opinion. What should we do? We had a broadcast with Mykola Pohorilsky. He also says that we're in a tough economic situation. What next? When the war ends, what's the way out? Or raise the GDP, meaning we need to have our GDP growth indicator go up, and with that, economic growth should follow.
Or if we are not able to change this government, to distance ourselves from it, then we just need to massively go into the shadow economy and stick to the policy that Serhiy Rachinsky talks about.
He says we need to distance ourselves from this government, to step aside and work for ourselves. Well, together with Mykola Pohorilsky, we called this system going into the shadows. We are not urging people to do this. We are saying that if people don't step away from the government, if they don't distance themselves, there is no way out.
What do you think you are closer to?
I think that's a very appealing proposal by Rachinsky, but it's completely unworkable, and I'll explain to you why. In a way, I lived like that. I didn't pay attention. I was torn apart inside by everything that was happening, but I managed to build my own little island of happiness in Ukraine amidst the general island of unhappiness. What did it lead to? What did it lead to? As soon as I barely said a word, I was immediately attacked, and I had to leave. And that's how it will end for anyone who chooses the tactic of distancing themselves. How are you distancing yourself today? If someone wants to do business but can't go out because of the draft offices, have you really stayed out of it? How will you distance yourself if they add Vati for sole proprietors? They're going to add it. Now the heroes will appear. Tatiana, there's a group of people. This is an excellent topic. It's good you mentioned last names because people will watch like Rachinsky or me and compare before choosing. When we talk about banning Telegram or some social networks, these active people jump out and they don't care. They'll just turn on a VPN. They'll add VAT for sole proprietors. Doesn't matter. We'll switch to crypto. No, you won't switch to crypto. When you start a small business like a coffee shop, are you really going to accept crypto for coffee? Until the first inspection. Even if 1 out of 10 pays you that way, I mean, sure, for some businesses maybe. Some services like IT or media, you can do everything in crypto there. You can find a way outside Ukraine's financial system. Yeah. But that's, well, maybe 3% of businesses can work like that. But everyone else will need primary documentation, invoices, completion certificates. It just won't work otherwise. So no, I have a different suggestion. People who are active, who believe they have something to offer, who have achieved something in life, who have competencies, should go into politics. And that's a very convenient position without naming names. I know everything. I'm a super turbo libertarian, but I don't confront the authorities. I'm very cautious, and I'm just telling you, go hide somewhere, do your own thing. Can you imagine if someone had once told Elon Musk, buddy, you need to work in such a way that nobody sees you, distance yourself from the government, go further underground? Then none of what Musk invented would exist today, or Google, or anything else in the world. It all started in a garage in America and ended up on the stock exchange. So it's just, well, like hopelessness, it's hopelessness, but people need to be given hope, even if it's faint, but hope for change. So what's the point of living in the shadows? Yeah, then it's better to leave Ukraine by any means, fair or unfair, and do business in a civilized way in Poland, Hungary, Czech Republic, Spain, Italy, pay those exorbitant taxes there. But knowing that you live as a legal, normal person, you have purchasing power, your clients have it, and you won't be harassed by special services, tax authorities, and so on and so forth. Why live in the shadows with all these twisted arrangements? What for?
But what's the way out? Even if elections are organized, and even if they are, only people with money will go there because others won't be able to promote themselves. And so the same kind of people as before will come again, and they still won't give people freedom. If we had acted sooner, like those people you mentioned, and if the state or we had organized the territorial recruitment centers, things might have been different. And if we had resisted them and defended ourselves, we could have protected the men, we could have, now we can't anymore.
Everyone is scared, they've all left, but before we couldn't separate from the state.
What they told us, that's it. These TCCs pay them. That's all. We didn't create any other alternative. We just did what we were told.
Do you understand? Right. I'm not sure if unification is the right word. I'll explain. You noticed it accurately, and I'm tired of explaining. A dictatorship isn't built overnight. It always started with something. First, they tried to silence Eliseevich. Then they carried out the first forced conscription sweep, you see? Then the second, the third, and then they silenced 10 more people. Once, Arestovich was relaxed and told me, go ahead, try appealing to the UN. And then just like that, they shut down Arestovich himself. And that's how it will be with everyone. And what am I getting at? Society was boiled like a frog. You see, they boiled it slowly, little by little, and now it's done. And why is that? People have never lived a single day in a democracy. They don't understand. They don't have that heightened sense of self-worth. Most importantly, they don't feel like they have rights in their own home. They don't feel they have any rights. And of course, propaganda. Just take propaganda, for example. Well, listen, you can keep listening to Petrov or even Masichuk in the 5th year. But honestly, Masichuk's views have already dropped to Petrov's level. Well, you see, you also have to immediately label someone as a propagandist and refuse to listen to them. But in that case, you need to be smart. Even those who don't like them, many don't accept me. Why? Because of the Russian context. Do you understand? So, Yermak, a Ukrainian, writes on Telegram in Ukrainian, but the wiretaps are in Russian, and he robs the country and acts like a dictator in Russian. They're all like that there. Then go and choose then.
So how are we supposed to choose people? It's not clear. Who is with whom is understandable. Who is joining with whom, where it will all lead. Impossible to know. It's also unclear when the elections will be. What does Palisa say? Well, Palisa gives us hope. This is the deputy head of the president's office. I'll quote him.
Well, maybe he's saying something serious, or maybe, as always, it's unclear. Vladimir Putin's seat is already starting to wobble.
There is misunderstanding and paranoia in his closest circle. That's why it feels like they might have something similar to the revolution of 1917. If Ukrainians keep bombing them with these drones, what do you think Putin will do? So if you go by what Palisa says, the regime is being shaken and people themselves will rise up against Putin. Do you think people will rise up sooner?
Or will Putin announce a general mobilization or use nuclear weapons if he feels he needs to?
Let's go in order. Let's go in order. So today there was news that respected military officials will be appointed to important positions in the president's office. This Palisa is the same kind of respected military man of Yermak, who always has a stern face and wears a military uniform. Let me tell you right away why this is being done. If you challenge or criticize the president's office, it's seen as criticizing Palisa and the military, and they'll accuse you of disrespecting the armed forces of Ukraine and ask why you're not at the front. They'll make even more people like Palisa. Now, Putin is having problems. I'm telling you, that's what's happening. American intelligence and European intelligence have no reason to believe that Putin's position is actually unstable. People, did you hear me? Not a single reason. This is the dumbest propaganda. They tell these stories, but somehow it just doesn't add up again. If things are shaky under Putin, if the people are already, making noise, and at the same time they say he'll announce mobilization, then mobilization should actually cause public unrest, because politically, by declaring general mobilization, you immediately put yourself in a bad position. You kind of lose trust. But you said it was a victorious war, and now there's mobilization. So. That's how it should be. But none of that is happening. None of that is happening. As much as I would like it, it's just not happening. Those people like Victoria Barbarova, that's Bonya, they think the FSB has split into 3 factions, that Gordon is coming out to overthrow Putin. No, Tatiana, this is exactly the KGB. To confuse people so everyone thinks that Putin's position is shaky. Do you understand? But maybe they do understand it, but they don't want to say it to the crowd. So I'm talking about people whom I don't consider to be like the crowd. It's all the tricks of the KGB. They contradict themselves all the time. One moment Russia is on the verge of bankruptcy, the economy is collapsing, then they immediately claim that they're about to attack Europe. Well, do you remember how many times that's happened? Even when Kulpa was on your channel during debates, he said everything would fall apart now. Putin is opening a second front, so how can it fall apart and open a second front at once? That doesn't make sense. It's the same here. Things are unstable under Putin but never fully collapse. We heard this at the start of the war. Putin has 4 types of cancer, remember? Here he is.
Here he is.
Yes, there was already a refrigerator. Well, okay, but those were Russians talking, those crazy professors that Gordon drags into Ukrainian media. Another one who's definitely not a KGB agent. Let people go to Google and check. Putin has cancer. And how many statements were there from our top officials saying he would die any moment back in 2022? Well, where is it? It's already the middle of 2026. Next. That's how it will be with Putin's unstable position too. Putin will really leave his post sometime by 2030, including that year. But for other reasons, completely different ones, not because of all this. You see how everything works. That's the kind of deception it is.
And they say that we launch these drones at Russia in order to put pressure on the people. And the people are supposed to put pressure on Putin. And tell him that we don't want to sit in cafes with drones flying at us or have drones flying into our homes, so the war needs to stop. Ukrainians
sit in cafes under drones, so why can't Russians sit too?
We adapted because we got used to it. That's their explanation if they gave one at all. Let's be clear.
It's the same people, you know, that meme, they adapt.
The language ombudsman says that people who have already received one fine for language should be fined again. If someone used the Russian language and got a fine of 5,000 hryvnias now, it should be increased tenfold. She is addressing the government with this initiative. This is still a draft law that she wants the deputies to adopt, and she wants to draw people's attention to the need to be more patriotic. This directly relates to language as we end our conversation. These are drones, Yermak, and we want to teach people to make them love the language and Ukraine. What should we do with these people who constantly want us to do something and love someone against our will?
Yes, she is an absolutely sick, hypocritical person. Her daughter speaks Russian, as you can see from her social media. Her daughter does not live in Ukraine. She is a first-class scoundrel who is destroying the people of Ukraine, of course not by her own will, she is just carrying out orders. 119,000 for the Russian language. So I'll repeat to you what I've already said. Soon they'll get what they want. Only Ukrainian speakers and Indians and Bangladeshis will remain. Yes, Africans too. Will you teach them then? They went even further. Unfortunately, that's not the biggest problem. They have now exhumed Bandera's remains in Luxembourg, I think, right? And they want to move him to Ukraine. And I'll tell you, this is a deliberate move by those organizations that control all of this from the outside to fuel the nationalist agenda. It's a kind of place of worship. This is very important ritually in any similar situation. A ritual place of power needs to be created. And according to their plan, it will be Bandera's grave. It will be Bandera's... I've been planning for a while now to make a video on this topic, who Bandera is. You see, Tatiana, with heroes like that, that's the kind of state you get. Bandera, excuse me. In America, the heroes are the founding fathers of the USA, who also have a lot of skeletons in their closets, but at some point they came to their senses and built a country with such principles that it became what it is today. And here we have Bandera. Well, that's the kind of result we'll get. And it's already happening.
As for that whole language issue, let's get back to this question because it's important. Zelensky also said that our rights in negotiations between Russia and America must definitely be represented by Europeans as well. And he says that Ukraine will not back down from the demand to be in the European Union because that's our security. Now we see that Magyar, who took Orban's place, has presented mandatory requirements to Ukraine that cannot be bypassed. They must be fulfilled, and only then will they consider our possibility of joining the European Union. They say that the Hungarian minority living in Ukraine must have their rights restored, be allowed to use the Hungarian language in education, have teaching in Hungarian expanded in schools, and the operation of Hungarian schools guaranteed without switching to Ukrainian, and allow the use of the Hungarian language in government institutions in Zakarpattia. So the ombudsman says to introduce fines for those who speak Russian. Zelensky says we need to participate in these negotiations and join the European Union.
But the conditions are such that they contradict the language ombudsman. How do you explain this?
I read these requirements. I think there are 11 points from Magyar. It's a very good requirement, very logical for a democratic state. I believe all minorities in Ukraine should get, as he said, schools and everything in their main language. Yes, Ukraine is a historical state with many nations, and half of the country is Russian-speaking. Well, it would be absurd to allow this for Hungarians, but pressure Russian speakers. Even in the European Union, it doesn't work like that. In the European Union, Russian is actually one of the 5 minority languages. International ones, by the way, just for a second. That's why hundreds of millions of people around the world speak it. So all of this is correct. I understand Magyar. I absolutely support the Hungarians. This isn't the most difficult demand for Zelensky from a technical standpoint. It will be bad for propaganda. As I already said, they won't be able to tie this together. But there are other demands as well. Even if you imagine doing this, there are other demands that Ukraine will never be able to fulfill. Because it's completely... Well, what kind of European Union is it when Yermak is giving orders to the head of the security service of Ukraine over the phone? What kind of European Union? European Union, excuse me. Well, what kind of European Union is that?
European leaders aren't saying anything about this. They don't comment either.
They're clearly not planning to take Ukraine into the European Union. Let me explain why Zelensky is doing this. He's basically continuing Poroshenko's rhetoric. First of all, he says, the European Union is a guarantee of security. The European Union is a political union, not a military one. NATO is the military alliance. And the EU is purely politics, political economy. It's about economic and diplomatic relations, cooperation. Why does Zelensky need this? He needs to dangle a new carrot. What did Poroshenko run on? The EU and NATO. What does that say? A delayed effect. So people, there won't be a good life today, but someday when we get there, and I'll be the one to take you there as hetman, but in the end it led to war, and only then will we start living. Zelensky needs this to participate in elections, which will happen eventually. To say, you see, I'm already either one step into the European Union, or look, they're already taking us in, and it's me, I did all of this. And to fool people about security, which has nothing to do with this, well, imagine Ukraine is accepted into the European Union. Accepted. Tomorrow Putin attacks again. What does that change overall? They're helping now and will help then too.
Maybe we just don't know. Merkel says we need to calm down and start negotiations with Putin, but she won't do it herself.
She says, let someone else take responsibility, let them go and negotiate. Yes, and look.
What do you mean she won't? Does she have authority?
She says she doesn't have any. It was the Russians and the Europeans who suggested it. She says she doesn't have the authority, she won't do it. Let the current politicians go and negotiate with Putin. So the Europeans have probably come to their senses.
Oh. Tatiana, here's one difference. If Ukraine joins the European Union, closing the borders again will never be possible. It won't be possible to close the borders. Although I'm saying this now, but you know, if it becomes the shield of Europe, they might say, forget our rules, close them, do whatever you want. So Ukraine, as we can see from the results of our conversation, Ukraine is being squeezed from all sides like this in a vice. Most people are focusing on the wrong thing. It's the old question. Do you care about appearances or about actually getting somewhere? They care about appearances. They don't care about the result. They care about everything except the essence, which affects everything. Well, that's how we live. That's how we live. Time goes by. Time is moving toward autumn. Autumn is approaching, and all of this passes quickly. And this nightmare, frankly speaking, isn't over yet. So what is Putin doing now? He also brought the cold snaps. Now he's waiting for the heat. You see, now he's waiting for the heat, because when it's hot, he'll need to strike the energy infrastructure again, the water infrastructure, so that a new humanitarian catastrophe begins. It happened in winter, and now a summer one may come, God forbid.
And finally, Romania. Is Romania in the European Union or not? Of course, yes.
Yes.
Romania is in the European Union, and it's an EU country.
And there they broadcast videos, video reports, photos almost every day showing how Romanians find Ukrainian men in the forests.
They tried to cross the border and the Romanians see it. One man was found not so long ago in the forest during the frost.
Because of the frostbite, both of his kidneys had to be operated on. He is on dialysis, that is, he was treated in a Romanian hospital.
They asked him why he was crossing the border. He explained that he was fleeing from mobilization, and this is a country of the European Union. So they could have raised the alarm and made a catastrophe out of this, but they are doing nothing. Well, let's note, excuse me.
They won't do what they could do. Why should Romania do it if, well, how can they criticize Zelensky? It's just that you stirred things up there. This should be done by the leaders of the European Union. But what is Romania doing on its part? They are accepting these people. They're granting political asylum and providing treatment now. Let's talk about something else. What has the Zelensky government done to our men? A person is willing to give up both kidneys and has done so just to get away from all of this. This is a dark page in our history. This is all on Zelensky, and it will pass. People will remember and hold us accountable, asking, where were you looking? Just as we're now holding that generation accountable.
He is a young person, a young guy. It's a real shame that this is happening in our country, but people unite around our channel. That's what I can urge you to do. Share our video, subscribe to our channel, to Denis Eliseevich's channel. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you, Denis, for joining this broadcast. Until next time, see you soon.